The meeting ended when around 60 nobles disappeared, screaming into a lake of excrement. Only a thin timber floor and some very bad planning stood between them and the cesspit. But first, if you don't subscribe after hearing this story, I'll assume you simply prefer content that's less historically accurate. So let's set the scene. It's July 1184, and you're a high-ranking nobleman in the Holy Roman Empire. You've just received a summons from King Henry VI to attend a Hoftag, basically a medieval court assembly where the king mediates disputes and everyone pretends to be civil while secretly loathing each other. The location is Erfurt, Germany, a perfectly respectable town near the cathedral. The delegates arrive on July 25th, ready for what promises to be a routine day of political posturing and noble grievances. Normal medieval business, really. No one suspects they're about to become part of the most literal example of a crappy day in recorded history. The morning of July 26 begins with about 100 nobles and officials gathering on the upper floor of a building near Erfurt Cathedral. Some historians think it might have been the bishop's palace, others say the Petersburg Citadel, but the exact location is less important than what was underneath it, which, as you've probably guessed, was a massive cesspit. Now, medieval construction had many charms. Structural integrity over human waste repositories was not among them. The building had been constructed with wooden beams supporting the floor, and those beams had been quietly rotting away, presumably while everyone assumed someone else was checking on them. The meeting gets underway. King Henry VI is there to settle disputes between various nobles, including Archbishop Conrad of Mainz and Landgrave Louis III of Thuringia. Important people discussing important matters. The kind of gathering where you want to make a good impression. And then, without warning, the floor just gives up. The rotten wooden beams finally surrender to the combined weight of roughly 100 well-fed medieval nobles, and the entire floor collapses, not into a basement, not into a storage room, into the cesspit below. The ground floor goes next, because why stop at one catastrophe when you can have two? And suddenly, around 60 of the Holy Roman Empire's finest are plummeting through layers of broken timber into what is essentially a medieval septic tank. Some are unalived by the fall itself, others are crushed by falling debris, and some, and this is where the medieval gods truly stopped caring, drown or suffocate in human excrement. Picture being a nobleman at this moment. You've spent your entire life accumulating land, titles, political influence. You've survived wars, plagues, and family feuds, and your final moments are spent in a pit of sewage, possibly next to someone you were just arguing with about border disputes. King Henry VI, by sheer architectural luck, doesn't fall. He manages to grab onto a stone alcove, one of the few parts of the structure not actively betraying everyone, and clings there while the floor beneath him transforms into a screaming void. Archbishop Conrad of Mainz also survives, somehow landing among the victims without injury or infection, which seems wildly unfair to everyone who didn't have divine protection. Landgrave Louis III of Thuringia also makes it, rescued from an alcove. So there's Henry, Conrad, and Louis, stranded on their stone perches, watching this absolute horror unfold below them, waiting for someone to bring ladders. Eventually, ladders arrive. The survivors are rescued. King Henry VI, demonstrating the kind of decisive leadership you'd expect from a monarch who just watched 60 nobles vanish into a toilet, immediately leaves Erfurt, just gets out of town. No lingering, no speeches, no royal decree about better construction standards. He's gone. Around 60 confirmed casualties. High-ranking nobles, every one of them. The kind of people whose deaths would normally warrant elaborate ceremonies and weeks of mourning. Instead, they're pulled from a cesspit and everyone has to figure out how to memorialize someone who technically drowned in sewage during a diplomatic meeting. The thing is, this wasn't sabotage. This wasn't an assassination attempt. This was just spectacularly poor planning. Someone built a meeting hall over a cesspit. Someone else filled that cesspit. Someone else scheduled a gathering of 100 people in a room supported by rotting wood. And nobody, at any point, thought to check if this was a good idea. Medieval construction exposed a fairly critical flaw that day. Buildings over cesspits require adequate support, a lesson that cost 60 people their lives and probably inspired some very awkward conversations about building codes afterward. There's something almost poetic about nobles falling into excrement during a dispute mediation. The universe delivering the world's most unsubtle metaphor about the state of political discourse. Except it wasn't a metaphor, it was just terrible luck and worse carpentry. Would you have been the person who survived by clinging to stone? The person who checked the floor beams beforehand? Or the person who simply declined the invitation because meetings near cesspits never end well? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay unhinged.